Welcome back to some more interesting questions. This is a very interesting question, something near and dear to my heart, reincarnation. And can reincarnation be proved? Is it a possibility? Are we reincarnated? Like, does this really happen? This kind of stems off to a video I did with child prodigies, or child geniuses. Why is somebody so far more advanced? Why is their IQ higher? Why is there even an IQ scale? You know, is how do these certain children are just gifted and far more advanced than their kids? And one of the theories behind it is as I go into this other video, that will be coming out. If it's not out already, it's possible. We don't know. We don't know what the future holds. But particularly in that video, it pertains to why children at the age of 5 can do piano concertos and other children can't even tie their shoes. So this video kind of branches off from that, and it kind of gives an insight on reincarnation. So I'm biased because I am a proponent of spiritual energy, and I am a proponent that I think some people's spiritual energy has been around a lot longer than others. And this is why certain people, it's like DNA. You always get genetics. You will receive them from your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents and so on and so forth down the line. You will get their genetics, whether it's the color of your eyes or your hair, the tone of your skin, so on and so forth. That is part of genetics. We know that. That's the scientific fact. But we don't have a scientific fact behind spiritual energy. But maybe there's a theory behind that. That is something they want to suppress. They don't want you to know that. I'm saying theoretically, they don't want you to know that you are reincarnated. They don't want you to know that you're already in a disposition by the time you came into this world, because your reincarnation level or your spiritual energy, you are limited on a lot of different factors when you come into this world. So that's probably something that they may want to suppress. But that's something that makes sense to me. I don't know. Give me your opinions below. Leave a comment below. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get to this video. But do me a favor. If you liked my commentary on these videos, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you want to get notified to when I'm making videos like this. But like I said, without further ado, we're going to go ahead. We'll get to this video, and I want your opinions on it, though. Leave your opinions. Let me know what you think.
A Louisiana boy offers incredible evidence that should satisfy both sides of the soul debate. His case offers proof that the soul is real, that it can be reincarnated, and that science can study it. At the University of Virginia, a group of psychiatrists use science to unlock the secrets of reincarnation. Since the 1960s, the Division of Perceptual Studies has been collecting cases of children who claim past life memories. They now have files on 2,500 children.
Well, I think what the research shows is that for people who are open to considering the possibility, that there is evidence that consciousness at times can exist separately from a functioning brain. So in the cases of these children's reports, if you look at the best cases, they provide evidence that at times there can be this carryover of memories and emotions that seem carried over from one life and continue on in another.
May 2000.
So it's something more than just your genetics. There could be something more than just your genetics. There may be a form of like spiritual DNA. That's basically what he's saying.
Lafayette, Louisiana. A mother awakens to hear the screams of her 2-year-old son.
He was laying on his back, and he was kicking his feet up like this and pounding his fists like this, just kicking and screaming at the top of his lungs.
Andrea Leininger cannot soothe her baby James. Eventually, he falls back to sleep. She thinks the nightmare is over, but really, it is just beginning.
Then the next night he had another one, and it was the exact same thing, the same exact kicking motion. And the more he had it, the more bizarre it became because it was so specific and so repetitive.
This marked the start of one of the best documented cases of possible reincarnation in history. Today, James Leininger is 12.
I play sports, baseball, soccer, go to Ascension Episcopal School. I have a lot of friends there. The other kids, when they were younger, say, I want to be a fireman. I want to be an astronaut. But I was always, I want to be a fighter pilot. I want to be in the Marines.
Oh, you got your school pictures.
Yeah.
Oh, they came out nice.
From the age of 3, James's parents began to hear stories from their son that shocked them. That their son was recalling things that connected him to a Navy pilot who died in 1945. They were skeptical. Bruce is an HR manager in the oil industry. Andrea is a former ballerina turned instructor. As Christians, they never believed in reincarnation, but they began to piece together an amazing story. The first clue came from the terrifying, non-stop nightmares that James began having at the age of 2.
He was saying, airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out. Airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out. That's when I was like, oh my God, is that what he's been dreaming this entire time?
What he was saying wasn't registering as much on me as what he was doing. He was flailing around in bed. And I remember the very specific thought I had at that point. This looks like The Exorcist. He was freaking out. I had this thought, he possessed, what is going on here?
Within a year, the visions that greeted James in his nightmares began taking shape when he was wide awake.
I was reading to James, and then he sat up and he goes, Mama, the little man's going like this. And he laid down, and he goes, and he did the same thing he did in his dream. He was kicking his feet up, and he goes, the little man's going like this. Ooh, 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 can't get out, can't get out. And I sat him back up, and I said, who's the little man? And he goes, me. It still makes my hair stand up. And Bruce.
You know, I've heard, I remember I don't know, this is maybe like 20 years ago. I remember my sister's neighbor saying that her daughter, they were driving past the Crystal Cathedral. And she was like 4 or 5 at the time. And she goes, hey, look, Mom, hey, Mom, oh, I built that. And she was just kind of like, what? She goes, you see that? I built that. I mean, kids say crazy things, but I mean, it's like, I mean, how odd is that to hear like a 5-year-old point out the Crystal Cathedral and go, oh yeah, Mom, look, Mom, you see that? I built that. And she goes, what? What, sweetie? No, that. I built that. And you know what I mean? Obviously, you got to kind of like look at it like, what? You know, like I said, kids, they say wild, crazy things. I've heard kids say, you know, kids are just, I think they're a lot smarter sometimes than we give them credit for. You know, being around like my nieces and my nephews and you know, being around their children, when they're like 4 or 5, they like, you know, like my nephew's daughter, like she's 4 years old, and she just interacts with you like she's a grown adult. You're just like, what are you talking about? You know? Yeah, like kids can be very odd, and especially when you're a teenager and you're going through puberty, you can probably act and react in a lot of weird ways. Puberty can have a lot of odd effects on you. I know. I went through puberty, and I'm sure a lot of you went through it too. So it can have odd effects on you.
Said, what happened to your plane? And he said, it crashed on fire. And he said, why did your airplane crash? And he said, it got shot. And Bruce said, who shot your plane? And he went, oh, the Japanese.
James then gave his parents the next uncanny clue, one that was very specific, the name of a ship from which he says his aircraft took off.
So I said, well, did your boat have a name? And he said, Natoma. And I'd never heard the word before. And I went down the hall and got onto the computer and Googled it. And down around hit 300, all there was this thing, Natoma Bay CVE 62. Clicked on it, and up comes this history of a World War II aircraft carrier. And so that was the beginning of what the heck is going on here.
Standing there staring at this picture of this little, it was like an aerial photo of this little aircraft carrier in the water, and we just stood there staring at it for a long time.
I had no answers. You know, how could he know this? How could he know a person? How could he know a ship? And what did all this mean? So that was where I really just said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I don't know how I'm going to do it.
If it's not reincarnation, then that's a very odd. If what these people are saying is true, then that's a very. If it's not reincarnation, then that is a very odd coincidence that a child would know the name of a naval vessel that he took off on. Like I said, if what these people are saying is true, that's all I'm saying, then that is extremely odd. Very odd.
Do it. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I'm not going to stop looking until I get as many answers as I can get.
This was enough to send Bruce on an investigation, doing his own research. Over the next 2 years, he learned about the men from the Natoma Bay, both living and dead. And James kept giving his parents additional, tantalizing, eerie clues.
Well, I kept asking him, do you remember what your name was? Do you remember what your name was? And he always said James. And I thought, well, he's 2, he's confused. He thinks I'm asking him what his name is.
Then James started drawing.
That was one of my mission things.
The mission thing, you remember that?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones.
The same thing over and over, like a movie compressed all into one frame. An air battle. Flak. A plane on fire. And his signature, James 3.
So one day I was in the kitchen, I was washing dishes, James had had breakfast, and he had an airplane, he was just flying around like this, and he goes, Mama, before I was born, I was a pilot, and my airplane got shot in the engine and crashed in the water, and that's how I died. And I was just froze. It was such a bizarre thing to say, but it was just that matter of fact. There was no drama, there was no emotion to it.
At 3, James started pretending to be a pilot, with an attention to detail that astonished his father.
One day he dragged a car seat into the closet in my office, and he set up a little cockpit in there. He had a little play school console, and like it was going to be a cockpit, you know, and he's going back and forth. All of a sudden, the door comes flying open, and he comes rolling out of it. I said, James, what happened to you? He says, I said, did you fall? He said,
Well, I mean, if these people are fabricating these instances, right, then, I mean, they've gone to 4 lengths, you know, and I understand. I get it. Most people would say, well, okay, dude. People will make up very elaborate stories to get attention, you know, clickbait, or, you know, so on and so forth in, you know, in today's world. And I get that. But I mean, I mean, these people seem pretty genuine to me. From what I can perceive of them, I don't know them personally, obviously, but what I'm seeing here, like I said, in my opinion, it just seems like, why would you go out on this limb to just kind of like exaggerate something like this? But there's also, you could look at this very pessimistically and go, oh, dude, this is a made up story, just, for a TV show or whatever. It's made up. It's easy to dismiss. Absolutely. But it's also intriguing at the same time.
He says, my plane got shot and I bailed out.
The next breakthrough came when Bruce was invited to the Natoma Bay Veterans Reunion. He asked about the names of men killed in battle. And this led him to finally solving the mystery of James 3.
He called me on the phone and he said, you won't believe this, there's only one guy from Natoma Bay who was killed during the battle for Iwo Jima, and his name was James M. Houston Jr. And I said, wait, that would make our James 3. I was so excited. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, that's him. It's James M. Houston. His name is James. It's the James 3.
James Houston Jr., World War II Navy pilot. At age 21, on March 3, 1945, his plane was shot down over Chichijima. Now, the skeptical parents were sitting on compelling proof that their little boy really was reincarnated.
This plane, the wild...
Okay, so I have to question this. And he died in, I don't know, what did they say, 1941 or something? What took him so long to be reincarnated, back, into 2008 or whatever? Because it showed the dad was like looking up stuff in like 2010, but he was supposedly like 2 years old or something. Okay, so this is where I become skeptical about like stories like this about reincarnation. My belief or my perception of reincarnation is like when you die, I'm assuming you're just going to get reincarnated into the next body. It's sort of like that live song, I can feel it coming back again. And that's what it is. Mother dies down the hall, then the baby is born, like that is, it's a reincarnation song, So my question is, was this person reincarnated after 1941, lived a whole nother life, and may have died in another life that wasn't as significant? That I'm asking the interesting question, because there has to be something in between 1941 and, like, I guess supposedly when this kid was born in 2007 or 2008 or whenever he was born. So what happened in that time frame? You're literally talking about 66 years in between that time frame. But yet he remembers this life. So if he was reincarnated into another life over that 66 years, my question is why doesn't he remember that life? Or maybe it just wasn't as significant, or so it's, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of like more confusing in the whole reincarnation thing, but it is an interesting question, and it's probably something that we should question. So, it's intriguing to me. This is an interesting question. Absolutely.
Cat is the plane that James M. Houston crashed in. And he was a test pilot for the Corsair. And he would test fly those off of carriers. The F-18 is the plane I want to fly when I grow up.
Since he was 2, James showed an unusual fascination for military air shows and an uncanny familiarity with vintage aircraft. His parents cautiously made contact with James Houston's only surviving relative, his sister, Anne. At first, she didn't know what to think about the little boy who claimed to be her brother reincarnated. But then, James asked her for a painting that only one person other than her knew existed.
She sent this January 16th, 2006. Says, "Dear James, I do hope that this is the picture you asked for. It is the only one of me done by my mother. I am sorry to be so long sending it to you. These past few weeks have been very busy and hectic. I hope you like it. With my love, Annie."
James believed then, as he does now, that it was the dead pilot's soul asking for that picture.
I had asked her for a painting that my past mother had done for her and me. This was in her attic for 50 or so years. My parents and she thought it was crazy that I would know about something like this.
Anne, too, became a believer. And there were other, more chilling connections. James had 3 G.I. Joes he named Billy, Walter, and Leon, names his parents thought were strange for a boy to choose.
Bruce is like, "Hey, James, what are you going to name your G.I. Joe?" And he's just playing. He goes, "Walter." And so we were like, "Walter?" And Bruce goes, "How come you named your G.I. Joes Billy, Walter, and Leon?" And he goes, "Because that's who met me when I got to heaven." And it was one of those moments where like the blood drained out of our face, and we just kind of walked backwards. Bruce went in the office, I went in the office, we closed the door. He's in there going through papers like this. I'm like, "What are you looking for? What are you looking for?" He finds this piece of paper, and he's like, and he says, "Billy Peeler, Walter Devlin, and Leon Connor were all in the same squadron as James Houston." I was like, "When did they die? Did they die before?" He's throwing papers around, pulls out another sheet, and he looked at the dates of death, and they all died before James Houston died.
They all flew with him.
Although James's dad remained skeptical that reincarnation might really be possible, what happened next was uncanny.
So we're cleaning up the yard. He's playing in the leaves.
Yeah, that's like I said, if this is actual, this is real, this is a real story. Because I'm always skeptic about everything. I'm very skeptic about what's real and what's not real. If this is a real story, this is a true story, then my question being is this: how would that kid know who was in that squadron that died before him? But it also just said earlier in this video, let's keep in mind, it said he was the only person who died. I don't know if you guys remember this. It said he was the lone person in that squadron that died in battle. So now I'm kind of confused right now and questioning this, because I remember earlier in this video it said, because remember the guy went to Pearl Harbor and like met with all these guys, you know, the dad, because he supposedly was the lone person who died in that whole squadron. But they just said, no, there were 3 people who died before him. So maybe there were people he knew prior to him being in that squadron. That's possible. I'm not refuting that. I'm just saying is, keep in mind, that's what it said earlier in this video. I remember that. So I'm kind of confused right now. So, you know, give me your comments, give me your opinions below. I'll get back to the video.
I said, "I just love you to bits." And he goes, "Well," he said, "I knew you'd be a good daddy when I picked you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, when I found you and Mommy, I knew you would be good parents." My head was shrinking to the size of a raisin, you know, my brain. I said, "What do you mean when you found us?" He said, "Well, I found you and Mommy in Hawaii."
James told his father that he saw them in a pink hotel, which is where the Leiningers were staying when they decided to have James. Bruce and Andrea were cautious about asking doctors and psychiatrists for help. they decided to find their own solution to James's ordeal. And their solution was to go to Japan, to the very expansive ocean where the pilot, James Houston Jr., died.
Thou who art the pilot of the souls of men.
The boat was right above where the wreckage of the plane was. And Bruce did this beautiful memorial service. And so I thought that was a perfect moment for me to just say, I sat down with him and I said, Jim Houston's been a part of your life for as long as we can remember. And he's always going to be an important part of who you are. But you have a life to live as James Leininger. And it's time for you to say goodbye to Jim Houston. And he just started bawling. And he cried for about 20 minutes.
He had everyone on the boat.
It was the saddest thing I ever seen.
He had everyone on the boat.
Crying. It's time for us to say goodbye.
Well, the thing is something like that. You're in that position, you're a child, and you literally have memories or something from being a different person. And people are telling you, well, you need to cut ties with that. But it's like, in reality, that's part of your existence if you used to be that person. So, I mean, that would explain why you would become so emotional, is because you're telling me to forget the person that I used to be, that I totally completely have memories of. That's cray-cray,
James Houston. Goodbye, James and Houston.
Good job.
I salute you.
Good boy. You're so brave. You're such a brave soul. Such a brave soul and spirit.
It was weird when we got back to shore. It was something had changed.
He left something there.
He really did. It was palpable. You could see that he'd mourned that and everything that had happened and was ready to move on. And he really did at that point. That's kind of when everything really changed.
I'm gonna be the same thing that James M. Houston was, a pilot.
The next picture that James Leininger drew was one of peace. The nightmares stopped. The memories started.
Yeah, that's, like I said, if this story is true, I just don't take anything to a grain of salt, because there's a lot of manipulations in the world. There's a lot of dishonesty for publicity and attention. If this story is true, that's very astounding. That this kid, if he really experienced these things, that's, that's amazing, and that could literally give validity to reincarnation.
To fade.
I don't want him to remember anything about his past life. He has a life, and I don't want him to be bogged down or confused or.
Well, he's our son. He's not Jim Houston.
Got a life to live.
Today, James Leininger can remember nothing specific about the soul that used to torment him.
The spirit that I used to have when I was 4, 5, 6 has gone away. I'm just James now.
So, I mean, this is a very difficult subject in the sense is that like I said, if the story is true, then maybe it is a possibility that sometimes people take their past life back with them. And sort of like I said earlier, my sister's neighbor literally said her daughter, she was like 5 years old, and she goes, "Oh, hey mom, look, oh, I built that." She goes, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, mom, no, I built that right there. And she goes, what, the Crystal Cathedral? Yeah, I built it. And I remember her telling us a story. She was like, she was convinced. She was like, no, mom, I built that. So who knows? I mean, there are so many anomalies. There's so many paranormal things, and extraterrestrial things, and so many weird things going on in the world. Reincarnation, absolutely, I believe, is part of the anomalies. It's part of the paranormal. It's part of all this type of stuff that's happening. So, you know, I'm gonna go ahead. This is interesting questions, and give a shout out. Oh, sorry, to the peace sign over here, and peace and love to you guys. Hey, thanks for joining me. Subscribe, hit that like button, hit the bell icon. If you like videos like this, please watch them. I really appreciate your guys' support, and peace and love to you guys. I'm out.